Story 1. I started wearing my natural curly hair after years of straightening it, and I finally felt confident. My friend, who always received attention for her curls, began making passive-aggressive comments and calling me a copycat. After years of toxic behavior, such as exclusively dating guys I liked and even cutting me out of a photo once, this was the final straw. Story 2. She criticized me for choosing not to breastfeed my second child, claiming that my decision offended her. She was one of my closest friends and my cousin. Story 3. My best friend since childhood, from grade 3 to grade 12. We played Xbox all night and smoked cannabis for the first time together. We attended parties and got drunk together. You name it, the staple moments for two young guys building a lifelong friendship. Just before high school ended, his girlfriend called me, crying and upset, saying he had been abusive whenever she talked to other guys. I called him and he admitted it, expressing how he wished we were in Russia because it's legal there. That realization put a crack in my perception of reality. It was my introduction to the fact that you have no idea who someone is behind closed doors. Needless to say, I haven't spoken to him in years. Story 4. I have ended 2 long-term friendships because it took me over 40 years to realize that they were not supportive of me and who I am. They never missed an opportunity to put me down or make demeaning jokes about me. What took me so long? Story 5. Yes, she started dating a man who made me uncomfortable. He was later arrested and convicted of molesting his children. Story 6. It took me a long time to realize he was a terrible friend. I always made an effort to get him to visit, even paying for his transport costs and spoiling him with good food and snacks. I had to deal with his untidy and careless habits. When he was back home, he would ignore me for weeks without even a hello. We would make plans to play an online game together while he wasn't around, but he would never bother to initiate a gaming session. I always had to chase after him for one. Eventually, I got tired of it and decided I was done. I had known him for over 10 years, but I was no longer willing to make all the effort. Story 7. Yes, we were friends for 10 years, but she stopped talking to me for about 2 years because she didn't like that I had other friends besides her. She always wanted my attention, and when I hung out with other people, she became really jealous. She reached out and apologized, and we started being friends again. I realized how different we have become. I'm engaged, pregnant, and starting my life with my fiancé. She is always clubbing, drinking, and hooking up with different guys. We no longer have anything in common. We have become 2 very different people. Story 8. She bullied me in school, and unfortunately, our parents got together and forced us to be friends. Her negative behavior continued for years in passive-aggressive ways I wasn't aware of until I reached my mid-20s. I confronted her about everything and expressed my belief that she owed me an apology. She bluntly told me that she didn't owe me anything because she was having a hard time. I felt like her emotional punching bag. Story 9. It turned out I viewed him as a full friend, while he saw me as a friend who only fit into a certain category. Someone to have a beer with, watch a movie, and talk about life. He did many interesting things that he never invited me to. It felt like I was a book on a shelf that he picked up only when he felt like reading. I can't recall the specific reason why we lost touch for a long time, but something caused it. We tried reconnecting later, but it felt shallow and overly forced. We drifted apart. I have no social media other than Reddit, but I looked him up on his public profiles a little while ago. He faced challenges in life, but it seems he really has his act together now. I also realized I genuinely felt happy for him. Story 10. I have known my friends for close to 10 years. When my sister died, 2 of my friends came over to sit with me that night. They quickly grew bored of my emotional state and decided they would rather party. I was not in the mood to entertain, so that was fine. The next day, I had to help make arrangements because my mom couldn't. They both got mad at me for not wanting to hang out with them and drink. Not once did they ask how I was doing or try to support me. I have not spoken to either of them since that night. Story 11. A wolf in sheep's clothing. I knew she must talk negatively about me since she speaks poorly of everyone else. She would find ways to avoid respecting set boundaries. She would get so angry with me that she would yell over minor issues. She took out her aggression on me and others. She exhibited low-key racist behavior and had a limited mindset. She was not supportive of me. Story 12. Definitely, I think as you grow older, you tend to tolerate less bad behavior. Don't get me wrong, the standard is not that high here. The number one issue for me is when people stop reaching out, as being in a one-sided relationship is difficult for anyone. Story 13. My best friend's married brother made advances towards me multiple times in one day, then instructed me not to tell anyone about it. I informed my friend that I did not want to be around her brother anymore, as she was unaware of the situation. She refused to discuss it with me and became very cold towards me. I ended our friendship of over 10 years. Story 14. His entire personality was about trolling his friends, who no longer talk to him, yet he can't figure out why no one reaches out to him anymore. The truth is, he is not well liked. Good riddance. He messed around and found out the hard way. Now he cries on social media about politics and anything he can desperately share for likes. He is the town laughingstock, but in his mind, he is a king. The essence of ignorance is bliss. He is truly blissful in his own little world. Story 15. We had toxic personalities, and we realized we were better off apart. It is unfortunate because we were friends for about 10 years, as well as writing partners. Without them, I haven't found a reason to write. Story 16. I had many close friends in high school, but eventually, we all grew up and drifted apart. All my best friends are gone except for one. Good reasons, bad reasons. I think things like this just happen. Story 17. After my best friend from high school and early college age got into selling heroin, I had to cut ties with him. It started when he had a toothache and couldn't afford treatment. He used heroin to numb the pain. To pay for it, he began working with a dealer to sell the drug and make deliveries. That's when I decided to distance myself from him. It was very difficult, but I could no longer be around that lifestyle. Story 18. A few years ago, I realized I was always their friend, but they weren't really mine. Then I realized it meant I didn't actually have any friends, and I don't think I ever did. Story 19. It turns out I had a racist friend. A wealthy individual who believed he owned everything and everyone. Total disrespectful person. Story 20. All my friendships have ended after I had a breakdown and stopped messaging people first. I have no one. Story 21. He married someone who disliked me. I ended the friendship instead of putting him in a position to choose. Story 22. They told me they were involved with several married coworkers and mentioned, I hope one of them leaves his wife for me. That's not someone I want to be associated with, especially since I was in a semi-serious relationship at the time. I finished the hangout and politely turned down future invitations until they stopped coming. Story 23 happened to me twice. The first time was with someone I had known since the first grade. We often played games together and hung out like normal people. I had an argument over nothing in retrospect. A few years ago, we messaged each other around the same time. We are in different places in life now, but it's nice to have that friendship back, even if we can't do things together like we used to. The second time involved a friend with whom I always played games. For almost 10 years, we had the same tastes in games, so it was easy for us to play together with a group. Even without games, we would talk almost daily about random topics. I decided that I needed to join the military and informed my friends that I wouldn't be online for about 6 months. When I got my PC, I found that he had removed and blocked me on pretty much everything. I asked the friend group, but no one could provide a clear answer. This situation annoys me the most because I don't know why it happened. Hopefully, it turns out like the first experience. He was in a dark place the day I left for training. I also understand the saying, when everywhere smells bad, check your shoes. I was a toxic person during my 20s and realized it when I ruined some relationships by being a jerk. I should have honestly kept most things to myself. Story 24. Their staunch opposition to vaccines changed their entire perspective on life. I had several friends who, during the pandemic, had too much time on their hands and were not particularly good at critical thinking. They fell into the bizarre trap of social media, lacking any background in science, philosophy, or media. As a result, They could not distinguish between fact and often malicious fiction. I didn't hold that against them too harshly, as intelligence and education vary widely based on personal circumstances. However, it began to hurt when they started ignoring lockdowns and face mask mandates, putting others' lives at risk. It became too much. The last 6-month lockdown in my country, the Netherlands, was primarily due to a high number of unvaccinated individuals, which left hospitals overwhelmed, with over 95% of hospitalized patients not fully vaccinated. That was a new level of irresponsibility for me. I ended significant friendships and became much more critical of people in general, especially those who do not think critically. While I understand they may not be able to help it, I no longer want to be around them. In summary, the principles of basic human decency are essential. Story 25. Yes, the guy who was a casual buddy had more issues and character flaws than I thought. I did not tell him to leave. I just faded out of the picture. Story 26. He had a massive overreaction to a friend stealing his thunder to announce his engagement. My friend's mom, not even the friend themselves, basically said congratulations in front of some people before they had the chance to say it, but they had posted it on social media, so the mom didn't realize they were going to mention it, as everyone already knew. He tore into them both, saying they were hurt and betrayed and started talking negatively about them. I had a conversation and said it was a mistake. They have apologized many times, and while it was frustrating, it doesn't feel worth fighting over. I'm not going to be pulled into the middle of it when the apologizing friend did as much as they could. He still wouldn't forgive, so I said enough is enough. I'm not interested in hanging out any longer and having the awkwardness in the air. It was a good decision as he wasn't the most genuine and supportive friend anyway. I am very happy for the friend I backed and the beautiful goddaughter I have, who is his child. Story 27. I had an on and off friend throughout middle school and high school who was proud of being a narcissist. She would belittle me and laugh at me for things I said or jokes I made. The kicker is she would do the exact same things, but when I did it, it wasn't funny or cool. Story 28. Last March, I ended a nearly 25-year friendship with someone I thought was my best friend because I realized he was the problem and not the women he had been with. We were never in a romantic relationship and did not want to be, but when I realized I was being used by him and his friends, I became tired of it. He had promised me many things, but he was the one who kept breaking those promises. It is a very long story, but I grew weary of his behavior. Story 29. They went quiet when my mother was diagnosed with cancer, then diagnosed with terminal cancer, and then passed away, all within 6 months. It was the hardest time of my life, and they vanished. Story 30. I was there for them through the worst of times. Family issues, deaths, and tragic life events. When the dust settled and I faced similar problems, no one supported me. So, I moved on without notice. Story 31. A friendship spanning over 30 years has evolved. Our communication was occasional through calls, letters, and infrequent visits. Over the years, our lives took different paths due to the decisions we made. I formed new friendships that aligned more with my lifestyle. One day, I mentioned my boyfriend's name, and she interpreted it as an insult, expressing that she thought she was my boyfriend. From that point on, our relationship declined and the friendship ended. Just because there is a history with someone does not automatically make that person a boyfriend. Story 32. She slept not only with my ex but also with someone who abused me. I can never understand this, and I would never do that to a friend. Story 33. I walked away from a 12-year, close relationship with my neighbor. We had kids at the same time, and our families were inseparable for years. I realized that every time I spent time with her, I felt depleted and emotionally exhausted. She is loud, and her socializing often involved drinking. I quit drinking and realized I didn't need or want alcohol or her friendship. It's awkward because I love her daughter, and they live 2 houses away, but my life is better without her in it. Story 34. I can think of 2 examples right away. One was a man who started trying to flirt with my wife. The other was a girl whose best friend sexually assaulted me, and she refused to acknowledge that it happened. Story 35. In most cases, we grew apart after drifting in different directions for years. However, in one instance, this changed despite us seeing each other regularly through a shared interest. At some point, I realized he was completely uninterested in me. Apparently, there were many interesting people in this small world, and I felt boring. I don't understand it. I'm tired of trying to maintain a close friendship with someone who can barely show interest in my life. That's just not right. Story 36. She became addicted to cocaine. I tried to help her many times, but she always returned to it. Then she met a toxic person who manipulated her, and I tried to help her out of that situation too, but she always went back. Eventually, this toxic person threatened my relationship with my son, and that's when I knew I had to walk away. I hope she is doing all right. She was my best friend for many years. Story 37. They remained friends with my cheating husband and met the girlfriend in the first week of our separation. Now, loyalty is important to me. Story 38. My friend gave up custody of his children to his difficult ex-partner, claiming he couldn't work or have a life because of his kids, even though his mother always watched them. He also received child support but wasted it. His daughter received disability money because she had a cochlear implant and was one of the first kids to get it, but that money was always gone. When he started asking me not to say anything to his parents about the check arriving, I began to distance myself from him. The day he returned the children to her was when I ended the friendship. 2 decades later, he tried to reconnect with me, and the sad part is he says his children don't want anything to do with him, yet he doesn't understand why. Story 39. He came from poverty. He worked hard in college and did well for himself afterward. He moved away, got married, then moved back, so we agreed to meet at a nice restaurant. It was my first time meeting his husband too. He had turned into a complete snob. Nothing was good enough for him. He looked down on the staff. It was terrible. Story 40. I haven't spoken to them. They ended it. Just one day, they didn't even speak to me. Since that moment, this friendship is ruined. Story 41. We were friends while growing up. Then he got into meth and experienced a significant decline, spending 2 years in prison. I never engaged in that lifestyle. I prefer to maintain my health and well-being. Thank you. Story 42. My long-term girlfriend wanted my blessing to start doing sex work. I couldn't stay and didn't trust her after this. Years later, I know I made the right decision for myself. Story 43. I have known her for 35 years. We were best friends as kids, and our families were always together. As adults, we have gone through periods of being close and not being close. Last year, I saw her quite a bit. She kept talking about wanting to take a trip. In early fall, a band we have been to several concerts together announced they were doing shows in Las Vegas this summer. We decided we wanted to go. Anytime we made plans, I have always been the one to book everything, and she can be slow in paying me back, which is frustrating, but I have dealt with it. So, I bought tickets for 2 shows as we had discussed. She had made comments about using her work bonus to pay me back in full. Months went by, and she finally sent me less than half of the money just for the tickets, not including what I paid for booking the hotel. She started acting a bit strange and stopped talking about the trip or contributing to any plans. One day, I asked when she would have more money for me, and she said the next Friday. We continued chatting like normal that week. On Thursday, I texted exactly how much the cost so far was and how much she still owed, since she hadn't even asked once but had a general idea. I heard nothing back and nothing was paid on Friday. On Monday, I texted again. Still nothing. I am over it. This was over 4 months ago, and I haven't texted again. Her birthday was at the end of that month, and I didn't text her. I'm sure she expected me to reach out again so she could give me some dramatic excuse, which is the game she has played many times before regarding money. We are too old for this behavior, and if she cannot be an adult and tell me that she doesn't have the money or whatever is going on, that's fine. I am selling the tickets and she will not get her money back unless she asks for it. I deserve a better friend than she is capable of being. Story 44. She was a narcissist who hated everything that made me happy. She made me feel as though I was not allowed to make mistakes or live my life if it didn't involve her. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders when I cut off contact with her, and she never tried to reach out to me again. I'm grateful she allowed me to have my peace in the end. Story 45. I have a friendship that has lasted about 15 years. Over the years, we had many intense arguments, and about 90% of the time, she initiated them. She betrayed me and gaslighted me multiple times. At one point, she even hired people to harm me and then denied her involvement. I kept forgiving her because I felt I had to. Eventually, she married a man she had known for less than 3 months. While this may not seem like a big deal, given her mental health issues, it was probably not the best decision. He began to abuse her almost immediately after their marriage. She frequently called me to complain and more than once said, "I don't even love him anymore." At that point, I felt trapped because she needed a friend more than ever. However, it dampened our friendship. She would literally catch him cheating, call me in distress saying, "I'm leaving him," only to later say, "He told me it was a miscommunication. There is much more to the story." Then came the last straw. I made a post about Elon Musk's salute, and she messaged me saying, "Hey, you're not very educated, are you? It's clearly not a salute, and he is going to be an amazing president." That response was completely out of character for her. I couldn't begin to express how uncharacteristic that was. In that moment, I realized that she had not changed at all since we met in middle school, while I had grown. She also refuses to seek help for her mental health, refuses to leave her terrible husband, and refuses to improve her life. It seems she would rather be a lifelong victim, constantly complaining about how the world is out to get her, and then align herself with a political agenda that confuses me. In response, I told her never to speak to me again and proceeded to block her everywhere. Story 46. I didn't end it. I was ghosted into oblivion, but we were toxic friends, and he could never take responsibility for being a toxic person. I would own up to my faults, at least. He messaged me recently. I responded, and we exchanged a few messages. However, it seems I am back to being ghosted, so it's whatever. I ended a 3-year friendship because I wasn't toxic, but he was, and he couldn't understand why people didn't want to be his friend. Things got worse when it became a 3-person group, and the other guy was a total yes man who outvoted me on everything to avoid conflict. Story 47. Betrayed me by accessing my medical records in her job role and sharing information about my health condition with others. I never spoke to her again. Story 48. She stole medication from me for her husband while I was helping her plan her wedding as her maid of honor. My biggest regret isn't the money I wasted. It's that I helped her adopt a dog from a friend who runs a rescue. I would give anything to get that puppy back. Story 49. I did not end it, but I contributed to the circumstances that caused him to completely ghost me after nearly 15 years of close friendship. He was a significant emotional support and sounding board for me, as I was for him. We also had hooked up in the distant past, and there was always lingering tension between us. His partner became increasingly upset about how close we were and how much we shared. Additionally, I have never been monogamous, and eventually, I guess she made him choose. One day, I went to check in and ensure he was okay since I knew they had been fighting, and I was blocked. Everywhere. Not even a goodbye or a wish for the best. After 15 years of loving him and sharing my heart, mind, and emotions, that was what hurt the most. Story 50. I used to have a few acquaintances in my life who were Christians. One day, I made the mistake of asking them pointed questions concerning their beliefs about the afterlife. I discovered, to my horror, that they genuinely planned to sing joyfully to their God while I and billions of other human beings literally burn in fire for all eternity, unable even to die, all for the sin of rejecting their barbaric God and his misguided son. I asked one of them, my sister actually, how she could possibly be happy in heaven knowing that I am being tortured unimaginably, without reprieve, for all eternity. She said, "There are no tears in heaven, so I guess God will make me forget you." I no longer associate with people who identify as Christians or Muslims, as I realized later they are just as problematic, even worse in some ways. Do not ask me to respect your religion if it defiles the very concept of love with such hideous beliefs. Story 51. Because they did not put in the effort in the friendship, we were partners and had a very deep bond, but they did not invest as much effort as I did. Story 52. Just once, and although it happened in 2008, I still longed for the closeness. I felt she often knew me better than I knew myself. We had grown apart so much that all my compassion and patience were gone. We had begun thinking of retirement and took steps to pay off the house. We got the investments in order and started to examine if what we wanted was actually needed, adjusting our spending. Days turned into weeks and months filled with the same complaints, always about a lack of finances. However, I was then informed about the weekend getaway, the online-only diet plan, continued repairs to the classic car, and so on. I spent hours trying to talk her out of impractical ideas, only to hear weeks later, "I told you so." She gave away the personalized gifts I had made, a cradle for their son, a handmade quilt, always with the explanation that someone liked it. The last time she called, we both audibly groaned. I knew it was time. Story 53. My best friend from junior high until we were about 25 years old was a popular guy. He was good-looking, kind, athletic, and smart. Everyone loved him. We had a friend group of 8 in high school that continued into our college years and beyond. He never really did anything wrong. The issue for me was that I started to feel like a member of his fan club. None of the rest of the group hung out if he wasn't involved. When he came home from college on break, we would all plan to hang out, which meant going separately to wherever he was staying. It felt like he was just being efficient by spending time with all of us at the same time. Eventually, I stepped away from the fan club. I feel bad about it sometimes because it wasn't his fault. I just grew tired of the dynamic. Story 54. I ended a long-term relationship of 25 years with my girlfriend because she refused to quit smoking, which ultimately led to her death. Story 55. Yes, several times. A man I had known for at least 20 years, discovered through some social media posts, was openly and proudly racist. I had no idea. Several colleagues from an earlier career, including our manager at the time, made no effort to maintain our friendships after I transitioned to another field. I tried to keep in touch by calling to say hello and arranging after-work get-togethers. While they did nothing. Some even treated me like an outcast. That same manager and I had worked in the nonprofit social services sector. When I moved to the private sector, he took every opportunity to make passive-aggressive comments about my decision. Instead of being happy for me for finding a new and rewarding career, he made snide remarks, always followed by the phrase, "But I'm just kidding." In all these cases, I never explicitly said, "We're done." In the first instance, I simply blocked him on social media. With the others, I just stopped communicating. Story 56. I wanted to be a bad friend, so I told her boyfriend that she cheated on him, which was true, and I never spoke to her again. Story 57. Yes, my best friend from childhood, with whom I traveled the world and worked on cruise ships, and I grew apart. I decided to get sober and work on processing my problematic drinking, but she wasn't supportive, and being around her chaotic drinking made it hard for me to stay sober. The good news is it's been 8 years, and she has found her own path to sobriety. She is now pregnant with her first child, and I am so happy for her. Story 58. Friendships come and go. Sometimes it's a clean break. Other times it is gradual. The reasons are many, but they all share one commonality. They just aren't worth it. Story 59. She became deeply involved in addiction, and for the sake of my own mental health, I could not continue to watch her ruin her life. Story 60. A friend of mine from high school got involved in activism at university and became incredibly difficult to deal with. I was tired of the constant complaining, said so directly, and just like that, we haven't spoken since. It's for the better. Story 61. Though she knew that I wasn't into socializing, I barely kept 2 people by my side. Our relationship was in a critical stage and I was ready to fix it with her, but she chose to tell me to go out with people whom I didn't know. You know my boundaries, so never try to convince me to go against them. Otherwise, you'll be out. Story 62. After 25 years of friendship, she became a modern-day feminist who expressed disdain for men. As a man, I decided to step back and leave that situation behind. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.